Hey guys, it's Joshua Sohn. Today I want to go over Cubase 12 with you. This is a new version from Steinberg that I think you'll really love when it comes to all the features provided. They also give you some new tools and new toys to play around with. I also want to give you my first impression of the program, of the update itself, and how that would be beneficial as a film composer. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the things that are more obvious that they've advertised for the last year. The biggest one would be the dongle support. So there's no more dongle that you need to use for Cubase 12 for it to load and work. You just have to install it on your computer, and that license will be good up to 3 computers. So you can actually install it to another laptop, and you can actually simultaneously use it at the same time. So it acts like 3 licenses in one, which is super nice. One thing that I would say is if you are into film scoring, you can now link up 2 different computers using the same license of Cubase and have that linked up with the VST system link. I have actually a video on that if you want to learn more about how to link that up together so that you can have a video session up and also a sequencer session up and have that simultaneously run for film scoring. So speaking of the film scoring side, what's really nice about Cubase 12 is they now offer a separate or additional video track. That video track over here, as you can see, gives you 2 options now. So if I just were to change what is on the bottom, that's going to be showing here. So let's look at this, and this is the final cut, and this was the rough cut that I received a few months back. And so by just shifting over, you can now see where those changes are in those scenes, and you can do some conforming edits with that. So very powerful. Before, Cubase only offered one. So this is borrowing elements from Nuendo, which is, I think, super nice because without paying the premium price from Nuendo, you get some of the features that are offered from Nuendo. That actually goes to my second point. There is a new audio editing option window. So when I go into the crossfade window here, it gives you more audio editing options to play around with. So not just your crossfades, but you have the nudge range now, you have a chaining mode. Some of the stuff I'm not too familiar with, honestly, but if you're a sound designer or if you're a sound mixer, this might be very useful at times. Another option that is going to be offered but hasn't been implemented on this version or this update is the Dolby Atmos plugin and their surround sound mixing capabilities. Again, this is a Nuendo feature, but this will be coming to another update of Cubase 12 in the near future that I've read about, and I don't do a lot of Atmos or surround sound mixing, but again, this is something that can save you some money in the long run without buying a license of Nuendo. You can just do it all inside of Cubase. Okay, let's go into the MIDI side of things. One of the coolest things that is offered is the MIDI remote. So this MIDI remote mapping is actually shown down at the bottom here. So if you look at the lower zone, and you can click on MIDI remotes, you'll see that you can map out different things. And I already kind of played around with mapping out my notes phone here that I use for a fader board. So what I have here is, as you can see down on my phone, I have my different faders that I can slide. I have 3 on the main window, and I have a little knob here as well, and you can program that knob to really any data or any type of mapping that you want from the audio side. So on this example here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play, and I actually have this map to the high pass, or actually low pass filter. And so if I wanted to map it, all you need to do is you right click and you do the MIDI remote mapping. You move your fader that you want it to be assigned to, and then you click on apply mapping, and all of a sudden now you can do something like this. You can actually move that with your fader. My fader was already set to a different command inside of Lemur, but this hijacks that somehow, and then you can temporarily replace it for something else that you can assign inside of Cubase natively, which is a really powerful thing, because before you weren't really able to map this high cut or low cut with anything in the past. And so that was kind of a small frustration for me that I had, or a little gripe I had with the other Cubase versions, but now with Cubase 12 they finally figured that out. So let's press play. I'm gonna play around with how that would work. Right? So you can see how powerful that would be if you were to write some automation on it. Let's try that in real time. Okay. So that is the MIDI remote mapping, or MIDI mapping, that is now offered with Cubase 12. So that is the remote mapping feature from Cubase 12 that really you can assign to any of your keyboard MIDI controllers that have knobs and faders. And it's super nice. The setup on it is a little bit of a learning curve, I thought. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. But knowing where to click on and say apply, all those things is a little bit of learning curve. But I think it's worth it in the long run, because now you have more options. And then if you ever need to change that setting back to something else, you can just remap it. Or if in this case with my controller, my touch screen controller, it's already assigned to MIDI maps. So what I would do then is, if I didn't need to hijack the instrument anymore with this command, I can just go ahead and disable the controller script, and then it would go back to where it normally was. Another thing that is nice is the logical editor. So let's go and find some MIDI over here on this side. And what I wanted just to show you is the logical editor has a new facelift when it comes to the different commands that you want. So if you just do apply preset, you can see now there's a different GUI interface, and there's even a search bar. So like if I want to say randomize, it gives you all the options that are listed here in the factory presets that randomize some of the MIDI. If you go into the main logical editor window, I think it's set up. This looks slightly different. It doesn't look like it's archaic, 1990s look as before. It looks more up to date. Everything here operates the same way. They just stylize it a little bit differently. But that's something to be said about that. The other thing about MIDI support here is now they support Bluetooth. Any type of Bluetooth MIDI controllers you can now use with Cubase 12. So that means something like the CME X-Key Air 37 keyboard, which is very portable, very nice to use when you're like maybe at an airport, or just on a little trip where you need to compose something on the spot. Having that Bluetooth really helps. You don't need a cable. It's one less thing to worry about. So the Bluetooth capability is a nice function. I think that's maybe one that was quiet in terms of the features, but I think is really powerful, and something that will be used more down the road. Okay, let's talk about some other functions now. So other things that are useful is this import tempo and signature from the tracks from project function. So if I go over here and do tracks from project, you can see how this would work. Normally, you just click on another session, and it will pull up all the tracks that are in that session. The only difference now is you can import the tempo track and the signature track. So I'll let this load up and I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so we have here the big window for importing data from another session. This is really useful when you're working in multiple sessions. In this case, what I want to do is find the tempo track and my signature track. This again was not available in the previous versions. So what you would do is you go here and then I would set it to either absolute or relative. You can also do cursor if the signature track is unselected, and then you can just import the tempo at the cursor position. But here I'm just going to do the relative position. And what you'll see is this imports that tempo track. Now, I don't really need this information because this is one track and this is another track in this older session that I used. So I'm just going to delete that. But what I know is this track actually starts here, not at the beginning, right where that second time signature is. And then what I will do is I will show you just some other things about the Cubase 12's feature of the audio free warp tool. But I'm just going to double check a few spots. So this is a cello track that I had recorded for this song called Nothing Left. And I believe that 2/4 bar should be where it's at now. Let's try one more. Yeah, so that 2/4 bar lets it breathe and comes back on that 4/4 bar. There's also a little bit of a retardando here. So let's go ahead and play this now. And as you hear, there's a little bit of a push and pull with the cello here, which is natural. But let's say it pushed and pulled too much and you wanted to edit that. So I'm going to press play again with the tempo or the click track added on there now. Okay, I'll put that volume down just a little bit so you can hear the metronome better. And then what I'll do is let's go ahead and mess around with the free warp on this. So what you want to do is you go to this warp tool and go to free warp. And now you can actually do it inside of the project console window instead of going into a separate tab. So what you'll do is just like how free warp worked in the beginning or in the previous versions, you just do it all inside of this track, which is really nice and convenient. And let's also find the grids. Okay, and as I'm doing this, I should explain, when I hover over the transients, it actually snaps to it. Even if I'm in the grid mode, it just snaps right on it, and it'll kind of has like a magnet that snaps on it. And then so what I'll do is I will just go ahead and move these over and quantize the audio notes until it's all quantized in here. And the nice thing about this is you can do this with the tempo track still, so you know there's still a natural feel of it slowing down. Okay, so let's go ahead and press play now. Right, and also now you can go ahead and match the tempo, and also you can match all those attack notes to the grid. Another thing I was going to mention is if you had a group of these and let's say you recorded an orchestra, there is a way to group these in a folder. So let me just show you how that would work. So let's say you had, you know, a string section that you recorded, And then as you played back later and you're mixing it down, there were some timing issues on some parts. Well, a lot of times when you do that, there's some phase issues that happen when you only change one of those instruments inside of the whole stereo image of the rest of the orchestra. So what's good about this is you can now do group editing and also do a phase coherent audio warp. And this is the same track, just duplicated. But let's say there were two different tracks and two different sides of the room. You can do the warp tool again, and still do it in different sides of the room without it phasing. So that's the idea there. Really powerful stuff. I think it's something to be noted, and something that will be very useful for people that mix in bigger projects like drums when you're recording drum sets or orchestras. Another really cool tool is the sidechain support when you're exporting files. So on the Cubase 11, they revamped the whole export audio mixdown window so that you can do single, multiple, and has a sync selection. You can even add cues if you wanted to down by the export cue window here. I don't really use it too much, but it's there if you want to use that. But the really cool thing about this is now it can export files that have sidechain on there. So a really popular one is in EDM type music. You have pads that are sidechained to the kick. This is how the pads would sound by itself. Right? And then let's add the kick on there. Okay, and it's already sidechained as a pre-fader, if you can see over here. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna put the volume down, and you can hear the sidechaining happening. You hear the difference? And so from there, if I wanted to export these files, normally I would have to export the sidechain tracks separately. But now you can just do it all together by highlighting those tracks that you want to export all at once. And even though it's just inserts and strip, not even having to do the groups/sends, you can just do this one. It should export it with those side chains on. And so let me just add this on here and let's test it out. Okay, so I put that over here. So the ones, let's just color this right now. So the ones in red are the baked in sidechain and mixed in files. And oh yeah, I accidentally forgot to bring the kick back up when I did that. But what I'll do is I'll just copy this over here. Okay, and let's go ahead and press play on just the sidechain. Okay, great. Let's add the kick back in. All right, so the sidechain support is very small in terms of the feature that's added, but it really does save a lot of time for certain producers that sidechain a lot of their tracks, whether it's EDM music or rock, even film composing. Whenever you need to sidechain the bass to a kick drum, is super useful. So this will really save time in the long run, make it more convenient for your workflow. Another thing that I like to mention is that you can actually drag and drop audio tracks and into the chord track, and it actually shows you the chord information. I was a little skeptical of that, so I wanted to just kind of test it out in real time. What I'll do is I'm gonna just import a track that I've written in the past, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so I just got everything set up to be able to drag and drop the audio into chord track. Let's see how this goes. So I'm just gonna go here and I'm just gonna go like this, drop that chord track in, and then it's gonna detect all the chord harmonies that are inside of your track. Okay, so it's successfully finished, and as you can see, it's in D minor, which is true. Yes, I did this in D minor. Um, Also, let me just make sure that I turn off some settings so it's not as confusing. Okay, so I'll press play. Okay, let's go over here to this B flat chord. Wow. And it actually detects the chord track or your audio track with the chords. It's pretty accurate in my eyes, just going off of all these letters here. So yeah, that is really useful. I mean, I do a lot of transcriptions for my job. Sometimes I get hired just to figure out chords, or sometimes I have to figure out all the notes too. But being able to figure out chords right away helps save some time. So I'll probably be using this down the road for certain gigs. But um, also, if you want to do your own transcriptions and just learn a John Williams song, try it out and see how that goes. I'm kind of curious. All right, and the last thing is the Cubase 12 VST plugins that are added on here. There are a few. I'm just gonna go over two that I found very useful. The one that I found really fun and it's very powerful is the FX modulator. So I already have some things on here, and I just bypassed them. But the first FX processing is the filter that you can add. If I wanted to see the full options that are out there, you can just click on Add Module and you can see what other options are out here, as you can see here down on the bottom. Um, and if you want to change them out, or you want to daisy chain them in a signal path, you can do up to 6. So there's that. I'm just gonna press play and let's see here how this would sound with this track. I'm gonna loop it over. Okay, and actually, sorry, before I do that, let me just make sure that's on the grid. Okay. All right, let's try that again. Right, as you can see, how that works is while you're on the grid, it gives you some movement in the time that you have it set for. So right now it's set to 1 bar. So every 4 beats, it does this modulation envelope here with the filter. So that was that. Let's go something like more up and down. So something like that. So if I'm going up and then by beat 3, it goes to the tippy top. And then at the end of the bar, it goes back down. Let's hear how that sounds. Really cool. Yeah, so I have that set to a low pass filter. You can do the opposite, of course, and you can do band passes and notches as well. Let's say I bypass that. You can do that with other things. So as I click on overdrive, you'll see that the options change down here at the bottom. And I have it set to different envelopes. You can even cancel all of these by just resetting the button here. You can draw in your different curves. You can, let's say, move it over. Like so, right now this is set to beat 3 right now. So if I wanted to move this over, you can shift in and do all sorts of fun options. You can invert it. Let's flip it. So that's the flip. You can horizontally, or yeah, flip that horizontally here. So there's also random curves. And all of these are given to you in a really quick switch of a button. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this a little bit so that you can hear this in real time. As you can see, there's a word that says mix. So all of this is doing different modulations in this window for the movement. In this case, reverb has mix, and chorus has frequencies that change up and down. So they all work differently in a sense, and you do have to spend some time to figure out what you want and and get that sound by playing around with it. But it's a lot of fun. This is something that I think you can spend a lot of time with and achieve really good results on. Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about actually on that same track is to go over this little VST plugin called Razor. This is basically a limiter, a brick wall limiter that is up to date and can really handle a lot. So I'm just going to use the same track again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move the gain up and down so you can hear the differences. And notice the sound quality if you hear any artifacts or anything like that. This plugin is amazing in my eyes. I don't hear really any degradation. You can really boost up the gain, make it a fat sausage if you want. I'm thinking it's pretty CPU efficient too. So if you compare that to something like the L2 plugin by Waves or the Ozone Maximizer, I think it holds up. It'll be a lot of fun to play around and A/B the differences between the two in the future. And then I'm going to also do that with a different style of music. This is a track I wrote that is more orchestral based. So let's try playing that. So yeah, this actually works in various different styles of music as well. So I think it's worth giving this Razor a shot in terms of using that in your templates in the future. Okay, that was Cubase 12 for you in a nutshell. I hope all of these little things I went over will help you to make a decision on whether you should upgrade or not. I personally really love all the new features. Also, I just feel like it's more stable and CPU efficient as well. So that's something to be said. If you found this video to be helpful, then hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.